What's up guys, it's me Xander as always and a very warm welcome back to the JLX YouTube channel. We are now in week 2 of our dieting phase, which means it's time to reflect on week 1. It's time to look at all the data, it's time to look at any of the events and challenges that we overcame in the first week, and there was a couple of them, and we're also going to be looking at how we look forward, what we're going to do next week, any changes if any, and of course we're going to be evaluating the progress so far. In this video I'm also going to be chatting through the importance of checking in, why it's worth doing it, even if you're not being coached by someone, especially if you are, of course, because you're paying them, so definitely do check in. But of course, if you're coaching yourself, is there any point in checking in? Is there any point in taking the time out of the day to kind of go through those bits and bobs, and is there worthwhile in that? Without further ado, as I said, a very warm welcome back. I'm looking forward to this week. Let's get stuck in. So first things first, the thing I want to cover before we go into my journey and obviously how last week went, first thing I want to cover with you is why a check-in is even important. Why am I doing this? Why am I recording these? And why am I going through them with you? Why don't I get a coach? Why don't I just keep going and see how things go? Why do I bother recording these things? So first and foremost, if you have a coach and you have a check-in process. We have a check-in process and we have catered that check-in process around the types of clients that we have and the importance of different subjects within those check-ins. Things like sleep, things like digestion, mental health, and those kinds of things. Those things are really important to the clients that we work with. And of course, that's only part of the puzzle. We obviously look at their training. We obviously look at their nutrition, measurements, and things like that. This is just an example of the things that we would include. Why is that important? Well, if you know yourself, then what you'll know is there are certain areas that are important to you, and there are certain areas that you might feel need a little bit of extra love. You might feel, actually, this is an area that's caught me up in the past. This is an area which, for me, I think could trip me up this time. So instead of waiting for that point to get me tripped up, I'm going to keep an eye on it as we go. I'm going to keep acknowledging that that could be a potential hazard in the journey to come. When it comes to checking in, there are some key points that I want to make very clear of the benefits, whether you're checking in with yourself or with a coach. The first one is accountability. When you're checking in, if you've got accountability to yourself or to somebody else, that's a commitment that you are making to do something. And because you are doing that, there's a higher, much higher likelihood you're actually going to do what you've been asked or what you say you are going to do. Put it this way. I've told you already in video 1 that I'm going to be posting this every week. So immediately, if I don't do that, I've gone against my word, and I've told everyone on our YouTube and everyone on our Instagram and all my clients that I am going to do this. So firstly, I'm going to look an absolute fool if I don't do that. Of course, in life, there are some exceptions. So things happen, unfortunately, that are beyond our control. And that might mean that there might be a week where it's a different type of video, or the video that I'd planned doesn't get released. But overall, there is an accountability to myself and to this process that I am going to follow. Accountability is obviously really important, and accountability often leads to consistency. So when we're accountable to something, we're more likely to do it more regularly. And as we all know, consistency is an absolutely fundamental aspect of any process that you intend to get progress from. The next one, and this is really important, and as a coach who takes a very holistic view on coaching, and I go into everything with my clients because I want to know how things are going, and I invest myself massively in their journeys just as I do in my own. One of the things I like to make sure I'm well on top of is trends. Trends are really important when clients are dieting because often dieting can get on top of people very quickly, and before you know it, your training's gone down the drain, your adherence to the diet is just shit, and quite frankly it goes in the bin. So any work you've done up to that point becomes a little bit of a waste. We start to feel very deflated, very demotivated, and overall we feel like a bit of a failure. Now, having taken loads and loads of clients through dieting phases, including myself in that, I've been through many obviously over the years, what you learn is there are certain patterns that you can pick up on very quickly, whether that's through client language or their stats and their general demeanor through check-ins. So that can be through things like what they're saying, how they're approaching things, maybe their mindset, even down to simple comments about food or simple comments about body weight. Those kinds of things you start to pick up on and you think, okay, if this carries on, I know is going to be the result of this is probably X, Y, Z. And what we're gonna do is nip that in the bud now, because then at least if we can do that, we obviously are ahead of the game and we can prevent anything further happening down the line. So trends we would look for, even positive ones, of course. Body weight, is that moving in the way we think it should be? Macros, are we hitting them in a way that is going to benefit our physique? So it's all well and good if you can nail your calories, but if your protein's 5 grams and you're getting 400 grams of carbohydrate, that's actually not going to be of benefit to your overall physique progress, because yeah, calories are king. But if you've not got the protein in to support muscle growth, or at least muscle recovery and repair, then actually when you go through that dieting phase, there's a chance we're going to lose that muscle. We're going to lose a much higher percent of that one we'd like, and obviously that means less fat loss. The next really good thing that check-ins are for is assessing needs and assessing the work-ons. Needs are things like, okay, actually I think we need to make a change, or okay, we need more steps, or okay, we need to address this. And of course the work-ons come into that as well, because it might be actually my steps were a lot lower than I wanted them to be last week. Actually in hindsight, my carbs were very low and my fats were much higher. So this week I'm going to bring those fats down, I'm going to pump the carbohydrates up. And all of this we're looking at in a way to try and optimize progress. The idea is that we make the process easier. Who wouldn't want an easier process? The next really important thing to look at is what people have coming up in the pipeline. Do you have a wedding next weekend? Are you going on holiday for a week? These things are really good to know, because if you can plan these in advance, you can start to move things about, like your deload weeks and things like that, so that you can facilitate them as part of the process, not break the process down because of them. We want to, at the end of the day, build a sustainable process. And if our progress is built on a sustainable process, that means that we can then keep that progress when we stop the diet, not just revert back and gain all the weight back again. So that's a really important one. What do we have coming up? And the next point on that is kind of, okay, do you see any barriers that might be preventing you from making the progress you'd like to make in the next week? And this is an interesting question, because it can be seen as, say, like weddings could be a potential barrier because you don't have control over the food that comes out. You could take Tupperware, but I mean, that's pretty severe unless you're near competition. I personally have never done that. And of course, then you have other barriers, such as, actually, I'm on a work trip from Wednesday through Friday. What shall I do? So all of these things, if we can preempt the challenges that they could produce for us, then we're ahead of the game. We're able to get on top of them much, much quicker. Once you've gone through all of the analysis from the week that's gone, and once you've gone through the kind of, okay, what's to come, how do we handle that, is there anything that we can do to help ourselves out, optimize the week that's about to come, the thing to do then is to then look at how we optimize that. So weekly behaviors. What are my targets for this week? What do I really need to do well? Let's pick 3 things and let's smash them, okay? Because often we set what are known as lag measures. Lag measures are essentially a measure that has already been produced by an input. So your body weight is a lag measure because it is not something that drives something else. Our calorie intake and expenditure is a lead measure. That's something that we can have an effect on that will change the result of the lag measure. For example, if you go into a deficit and you train hard and you keep up your steps, that is you leading, okay, that's leading with a measurement. We can measure all those things for an effect to be taken place on the lag measure. So in other words, if we do all of those inputs, we will have an effect on the output. And I talk to my clients about this all the time. I talk about inputs. What are your inputs going to be this week? What are you going to do that's going to facilitate an outcome goal? So the outcome goal would be, at the end of the week, I want to be 1 kilo down from where I am now. And I'm thinking about me here. How do I do that? I don't just stand in front of the mirror and go, be 1 kilo down, be 1 kilo down, be 1 kilo down, come on, come on, come on. Because that's bullshit and it's not going to help me. What I do is go, right, I need my steps to be on point, I need my nutrition to be on point, and I continue to push my training. I'm just going to nail those 3 things. Because if I nail those 3 things, that will result in my body weight coming down. Final point here is the collaboration of data for future use. Now, having done diets before and collected the data from those myself, I know exactly how to run these for me. I know exactly how I'm going to feel at different points, and this should work fairly like clockwork for me because I've picked up the data. I know what works and I know what doesn't. So I'm going to avoid what doesn't and I'm going to push what does, because fundamentally I don't want this to be any harder than it needs to be, and I want it to be as straightforward as possible. There are hiccups to that. There are different events, there are different scenarios, there are different heats, there are holidays, things like that that can come into this in a way that can detrimentally affect the process I'm used to, but we adapt and we note these things down, because in the future, when let's say when I get to week 14 of this diet and I start to really struggle and I think, oh, this just doesn't feel right, I'm tired, I'm blurry in the brain. But then I look back at my old check-in data from my last week 14 of the diet and it says, I feel like crap, I'm really struggling. All of a sudden I'm like, it's normal, it's fine, I felt like this last time and it was all good. So keeping this data and actually writing these things down is super important, not just from a perspective of if you're working with a coach to help them out, but also for you. So later when you come to diet, and this is why we do our check-ins in a way that we do in a Google form, because you guys can see them all the time. So you can go back and see, and we can go back and see exactly what you were like in the last one, or how you managed it, or things we overcame like challenges, and we can show you exactly in your own words what you did and how you did it and how that planned out. So what we're trying to build here is an arsenal, a library of information strictly about you, or for me, so that we can make this process so much easier. Let's get into my check-in. First things first, was it a normal week? I worked Monday to Friday as I normally do, same hours. I went to the gym 5 days, just as I normally do, and I was eating all meals at home, just as I normally do. However, we decided to go to Salcombe for the weekend. We spent the night there. It was absolutely wonderful, a really nice celebration of her birthday, and the weather was outstanding, as you can see. So what did we do? Well, essentially, I knew that the meal in the evening was going to be higher calorie. I knew we were likely to have a couple of drinks and things like that as a general celebration of her birthday, so I was reserving calories for that. In the morning, what I did is for breakfast, I had a coffee and I had a protein shake. Now, in the protein shake, I put 50 grams of protein to whey isolate. I also put 5 grams of creatine, that's monohydrate, and I also had a fairly big coffee as well. Now, the pure reason for this was that I knew I was going to drink that protein shake, not straight away. I actually longed it out between about 3 hours. So by the time we left our house, I think we left at about 7. I think I finished drinking it around 10:30. So actually it was quite a sustainable breakfast for me in the way that actually it kept me going. It was, by far enough in terms of volume of fluid. And also the coffee was stimulating, obviously, and the protein is where we need it. So I didn't have any carbohydrates there, knowing that I was going to try and save that. For lunch, I then had a meal deal, actually. I do love a meal deal. I do love a Tesco meal deal. So what I did is I took a Tesco meal deal, which was a pasta pot. I think it's like the chicken Caesar salad. And what I did with that is I took alongside that 100 grams of roasted cooked chicken from home. So essentially, I was really jacked up on protein by this point. I'd had 50 grams of whey isolate for breakfast. I'd had over 200 grams of chicken for lunch. I think by this point, I would probably have been on about 120 to 125 grams of protein because obviously the pasta and things that have some misc proteins in as well. And then I also had yogurt for the afternoon. So easily, by the time I came to dinner, I must have had close to 145 to 150 grams of protein. And I also had very minimal carbs and very minimal fats, essentially allowing me to have a lot more freedom in the evening. Now, as it happens, the menu was actually fairly limited, and the thing I had for dinner was then a steak. So I probably had loads of, I'm estimating somewhere like 230 protein for the day. We had some really nice veggies. The meal was outstanding. It was very, very nice. We decided to actually not have a starter to try and save some calories, and we were also starving, so we wanted our mains. And then we shared a dessert as well. Essentially, I was probably under maintenance, actually. I probably was still in a deficit for the day based on our activity levels and the food eaten. The next day, we decided to take a hike which was absolutely roasting. It was so hot. It was probably 26, 27 degrees. And as you can see, it was very, very sunny. So it was lovely. It was absolutely outstanding, but I wouldn't recommend a 6.5 kilometer hike at that time of day, being a couple of amateurs like we are. So it was fantastic. It was lovely. Loads of steps for the day. I think we clocked up about 22,000 for the day. We had breakfast at the hotel, which was lovely. Again, probably fairly balanced, not as much protein as we'd hoped. I had scrambled eggs on toast with some bacon and a Greek yogurt pot, so probably more calories per gram of protein than I would usually have for breakfast, but we were accepting of this and we knew that this was part of the process when we decided to go away. For lunch, we actually, in the end, had a very light lunch because what happened is with our walk and with some activities that we had planned, lunch actually ended up being around kind of 2, 3 o'clock, where we had a nice meal at a restaurant. Well, it's a pub, kind of sea shack, if you like, on the seashore, which was lovely. And that was literally a barbecue meal with some salad, a few bits of bread. It was really, really nice. And then went to my parents' house for a barbecue in the evening. So probably on that day, slightly over maintenance, I would say, in the end, but generally speaking for the weekend, definitely leveled out at maintenance, if not slightly under. Loads of activity, loads of steps, and just a fantastic time. You know, we didn't let the food aspect or the alcohol minimize our fun or enjoyment or anything like that. We just incorporated it, we worked around it, and altogether it was a bloody wonderful weekend. Okay, so I've got my shots up in front of me here, just looking at general progress. We're not expecting to see massive changes between weeks 1 and weeks 2. Now for me, I can actually see some quite clear changes, and that's because I came off the back of not training for a number of weeks, as I said in my last video, due to COVID and obviously our 2-week holiday. So actually, I think the water's dropped quite a bit, muscles have pumped up quite a bit more, and generally there is some progress to see, but I wouldn't expect that for most people, okay, unless you're in a similar position, you're quite new to training and things like that. So in terms of weekly updates, okay, let's dive into them. I started with my body weight at 182.75, okay? That was my starting weight. I actually weighed in the weekend before, so this was on the Monday. On the Friday, I weighed in at 184, but I maintained at the weekend and it came down, so I think that was probably just more water than anything else. So that was my body weight to start. Then the weekly average for week 1 was 180.75. So fantastically, we got that really good drop off in the first week, which we can expect. Okay, so we can expect a good drop off in the first week. So the average weekly loss in percentages was 1.1%, which is great, and kind of just above what we'd be looking for. But in week 1, that's kind of normal. So if I kept hitting this rate, I probably would reduce it slightly and I would increase my calories. This is unlikely to happen. Total loss so far in this update is 2 pounds. What we're looking for is just to carry that on. Here's a graph, so weeks 1 to week 2, and I'm going to keep updating this one as we go. So obviously all the weeks are going to line up and we're going to see my weight and how it fluctuates through the week. So I'm really excited to see how that goes. Macros wise, so I'm sharing my macros with you. I know a lot of people don't do this. However, I am showing you this as an example of me, and I hope that everyone here watching this is sensible enough to know not to try my macros, because of course they probably won't work for you. So my average calories for the week were 2,105. And if you remember back to last week, the aim was 2,000 to 2,200. Average protein 191 grams, average carbs 199, fats were 37, and fiber was 19 grams per day. Now, if you look at that alongside the target macros that I had, generally speaking, pretty spot on. So bang in the middle of the calories, a little bit on the low side for the protein, but I set my protein a little bit higher anyway, so that's fine. Carbohydrates very low. The reason I do that is essentially if I'm not super hungry or even hungry at all, I will just lower them a little bit, and actually I'll feel my way into the deficit a bit more than just blindly follow the numbers. Again, going back to earlier, we look at experience and we look at actually what worked last time. That's something that's worked well for me. Fats are slightly under. I mentioned again last video that I'm not someone who eats a huge amount of fat, so for me this doesn't bother me. I'm absolutely fine. And fiber was actually under. So that is something that we are going to discuss a little later. Steps and sessions. So 5 sessions I had planned, 5 sessions I got done. My daily step goal was 9 to 11,000. And as you can see, I hit 11,490, which is perfect. Ticked that box wonderfully. I am a big fan of biometric feedback. I do this with all my clients. I find it super important. It's really good to get to know people, how they feel, how they perform and things like that. And fundamentally, it's a very important metric or group of metrics to keep your eyes on. So looking at mine, sleep, and by the way, I've done these on like a 1 to 5 scale, so there will be no like odd percentages. It's either 20%, 40%, 60%, 8%, 100%. So sleep, not 100% this week because of the heat. It was very, very hot, so naturally it was down slightly. Energy, start of a deficit, I'm adjusting. I didn't feel 100% energy. I also wasn't that bothered, so 4 out of 5 or 80% there. Hunger, 20%. It's a 1 out of 5. I'm not really feeling any hunger at all. There's a few pangs here and there, but generally speaking, I'm absolutely fine. Stress, very low this week. A fantastic week of work. Brilliant results all around, and just generally chuffed with how things are going and managing my time very wisely so far. Fatigue, it's week 1. If I was fatigued at this point, I would be concerned, but I am absolutely fine. So the first thing I'm going to do, having gone through my check-in, is reinforce all the things I did well and want to carry forward to next week. The reason I do that is it's very easy to just focus on the things that didn't go so well, try and fix them and then implement the new. But actually, the reason we're in this place is because a lot of things went well. We got the £2 of loss, 1.1%, fantastic. How do we achieve that? What were the inputs? What were the lead measures that helped me do that? So firstly, steps. I absolutely nailed them. Really, really happy with my commitment to those. Even on days where I was tired and I was hot and I was bothered, I still went and got my steps done. I found time, I planned it into my diary, and I got those done. So I'm super chuffed with that. The next one is nutrition. As I mentioned in my previous video, I'm not someone who gets super obsessive, not at this point, and I try to have a nice relaxed entrance to any phase that I do, especially dieting, because I do have the mentality of someone who can get very easily obsessed with things and very easily indulged. So I am someone who likes to keep back as long as I can so that I don't get fatigued too early on. So I'm really happy with my approach to that so far. I will, however, be looking at my fibre intake this week because my fibre was a little low. On that note, what I did do was check over my MyFitnessPal, and what I noticed is that on the vegetables I was having with my lunch, I have a packeted frozen veg, 200 grams with my lunch, wasn't recording any fibre, and I can promise you there is fibre in that. So there's about 11 grams of fibre in the lunch that I've been having, so I think only 3 grams in total were actually being recorded. So if I were to add another 8 grams of fibre on average every day, because I have a similar lunch each day, actually I'd be up to 27 grams, and that's sufficient. So I don't actually need to work on that, but it is something that I would have done had I have looked at that and gone, actually that's not quite right. I want to make sure that that's slightly higher. Of course, training went fantastically, no qualms there. We've just got to keep maintaining and keep pushing on even if the calories do start to take their toll a little bit, but I'm really, really happy with that. And obviously, hunger is in a good place. There's some, but not loads. Stress is there. It tends to be for everyone at some point, but it's absolutely fine. It's definitely manageable and something that I can 100% put down to good evening routines, good morning routines, and generally speaking, fantastic structure throughout the day. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to be looking at is changes for this week. Is there anything I need to change at this point to make sure I'm optimizing my process, optimizing my nutrition or training or lifestyle so that I can get better results and the effort I'm putting in is going to fruition? Yes. One thing, there's only one thing I am changing this week, and that is the volume within my training. So in week 1, I start with the very minimal volume that I need, and then in week 2, what I do is as I go through my training, I assess how it feels, I assess the progress, and I will add sets where I need to. Across the week, I have actually added 5 sets so far, and they are in for my quads, my arms, so my bicep and my tricep both have an extra set. I also have an extra set on my, actually 6 extra sets, because I have an extra set on my abs, so I have an extra set on my core and my calves, and then 1 extra set as well in for hamstrings. So 6 extra sets total. That is the only change that I'm making this week because it's the only change that I need to make. One thing you'll recognize very quickly about me is I don't change things when I don't need to. At the end of the day, if a process is working and it doesn't need fixing, don't change it. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make all the time is they don't trust themselves with the process that they've got. They don't trust themselves, the scales don't move or something doesn't feel quite right, and they start changing things. And then panic ensues, they change more things and they're frantically trying to see results. But one of the best things about our bodies is they are fantastic machines when we are consistent with them. So if you even are doing the wrong thing, if you're being consistent with it, you're going to find out much sooner than if you keep changing stuff. And likewise, more recently, which you're going to see in next week's update, consistency massively pays off, and it is a really fundamental part of seeing good results. Folks, thank you ever so much again for joining us. If you've got any questions, please do put them in the comments. I will answer every single one of them. And of course, please do like and subscribe. It massively helps us with the algorithm. It helps us to push our information to more people such as yourselves, and hopefully we can help get more people top quality information, top quality results in the safest and of course simplest of ways. Take care, be safe, much love, all the best now. Bye bye.